Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Essay. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei is son of Sparda and Eva? Part 2. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Rias Gremory was looking over papers about their latest requests, or their lack of. From the look of things it seemed that they have been losing possible new regulars to a new group. She cross-references it with Sona's peerage and found that she had been losing profit as well from granting the desires of humans. Rias needed to find who had been tagging their summonings and either have them stop or bring down the law on them. Rias knew this was no normal stray, since when would a stray hunt other strays? Until further notice she had her peerage hold back on giving out flyers until further notice. She of course allowed them to give the flyers to their regulars but had them send their familiars to watch them in case something was up. Then came the fact that Kaneko's discovery of a combination of angelic and demonic power which by all logic shouldn't be able to exist in one body without it conflicting with itself. Devils derived their power from desire, and though she knew that the original devils took power from desire and sin, she had made it hard to believe that a devil also possessed angelic powers when angels derived their power from hope and prayers. Something wasn't adding up. Could the holder of this power be the one behind this, or is it something else? She needed the answers, but right now she was focused on building up her numbers as well, starting with that one student named Hyoudou. Rias had read his file, but it seemed even his file made him a mystery. Hyoudou was adopted into the Hyoudou family when he was just 5 years old. His birth father had vanished when he was only 4, while his birth mother had raised him herself. Issei's only known friends were those 2 boys who make up the perverted trio of this academy. Though well, the 2 boys took their perversion too far. Issei on the other hand knew self-control of his hormones and did his perversion differently. It earned him many nicknames in this academy, as among them were Honorable Pervert, which he got that name because whenever he got caught he owned up to it and took his punishment like a man. But no matter how much the kendo club hit him, it didn't seem to bother him. It got to the point that the kendo club turned it into a sparring match to which Issei would always win, but Issei would make bets with them as well, like recently where Issei had the girls take nude photos of themselves and send it to the boys they like, asking said boy for a date and sent some to him. Luckily Issei never shared the pictures online or with his friends. In fact, after he got those pictures, the pictures were never seen again. Rias decided not to dwell on it, but she already knew Issei was skilled with sword, and from Kaneko's spying, she saw Issei wasn't bad. A pair of guns either when he went to an airsoft gun range and one with just 2 pistol-shaped airsoft guns. Rias knew that Issei was versatile, which would possibly make him a pawn if not a knight. Plus Rias sensed great power within him. No doubt he also possesses a sacred gear, though which one it is has yet to be discovered. But Kaneko always lost Issei after a certain point after school. No doubt he was aware that someone was spying on him. She didn't know if it was of someone else or her own group. Rias then sighed, knowing whatever this being of both angelic and devil origin was, an ancient book must hold the answer. Rias then reached over to a book Akeno was able to procure from one of her contracts, as the book had what looked like a demon and angel wing on the cover, as between the wings were horns and an halo. Rias sighed before she opened the book, hoping to find the answer here. But to her shock, Rias couldn't make heads or tails of this book. It was completely unknown to her, and devils were supposed to read and speak any language in the world. What is this? Rias said, as for the first time possibly in devil history, there was something a devil was unable to read. Rias soon caught sight of one word that she was able to understand, or at least find a close translation for it as she looked at it. Nephilim. Rias said, as to her that sounded like a possible lead. But Issei downtown Cow City. Issei was dressed in his school uniform, as luckily he was able to hide his guns ebony and ivory pretty easily, which put him at a bit of an advantage. Not like he would need it during the day, but it never hurt to be prepared. As Issei walked he soon arrived at his destination, which looked to be a bar built into a building. As he then walked in, hearing smooth jazz music playing as the sign had red neon lights that said Gates of Hell. Inside the Gates of Hell, insert Bayonetta Ost Gates of Hell, Issei walked in to see a large man, no doubt a foreigner by his skin tone, washing a glass, as nearby was a slightly overweight man. As Issei walked over to the bar and sat down on a stool. Kind of early to be here, don't you think, Issei? The man asked, as even in this dark room he was wearing black sunglasses that hid his eyes, which seemed to have a red glow behind them. The man had a sleeveless shirt underneath the coat, as his baggy jeans was accompanied by combat boots. Needed to turn in payment for last night's hunt, Rodin. Issei said before putting a bag on the table where the red orbs were gathered. Figured since you got us inside without arousing suspicion, it made taking out the stray much more easier, plus I got a bit of a show out of it. Issei said as Rodin chuckled. You know me by now, I never take sides in disputes in the Trinity, I just send handymen and women to deal with it themselves. Rodin said as Issei chuckled. Though I see you put a little extra in, no doubt for keeping certain unwanted attention away from you and your brood. Rodin said as Issei nodded. Yeah, it seems the Gremory are starting to get suspicious, which is never a good thing, especially when for a race that is practically extinct. Issei said, referring to his own race. Damn shame if you think about it, but you already got 2 members. That's a good start, but my familiar tells me that the Grimoire girl wants to recruit you, no doubt picking up on you sacred gear. Rodin said. Issei chuckled. What a small world. I was actually planning on recruiting her to my brood. She does have some killer boobs on her. Issei said with a smile, just thinking about how those beautiful breasts look under her cloths. Seems you Sparta men have the same problem, you're attracted to beautiful women. Rodin said with a chuckle as that shut Issei up. Anyway, something had come up recently. Seems some fallen angels are spying on you, probably sense the sacred gear inside you, no doubt you've noticed them. Rodin said as Issei nodded. A bit, yeah, though I tend to keep my head down around them, so makes a guy wonder why they would be chasing after me. Issei said as Rodin chuckled. You know I don't take sides, but word in the Great Tree says that some fallen angels have strayed from the Grigori and are possibly planning to usurp the Grigori. If they are allowed to do this, there's a good chance that the Great War will be continued after centuries of ceasefire. And I guess that will either be good for business or bad for business when you're involved. Issei said as Rodin nodded. Yeah, you're right. If the Great War starts again, heaven and hell will go straight for each other's throats. The gates of hell will go out of business, and most of all, there probably won't be any survivors. A basic apocalypse with the earth being nothing more than a wasteland. Rodin said as he looked to Issei as his aura built up and his eyes glowed red behind the sunglasses. Yes, I have to be the handyman who stops it before it happens, right? Issei said as Rodin nodded. Yeah, after all, in disputes between heaven and hell, send a Nephilim to deal with it. Rodin said as Issei nodded. Alright, then I better head to school, don't want to be late again. Issei said as Rodin nodded. Alright, but just so you know, my protection won't last forever. If both devils and fallen angels are involved, it's just business since I never take sides. Rodin said as Issei walked away, waving his hand to show he got it. And Ost, scene Breakout City. Issei arrived on school grounds calmly, though he personally wanted to arrive in style, but school laws and such stopped him at every turn. Plus he couldn't afford another mark on his record after that one incident last year that he in no way was involved in. As Issei walked, he passed the girls looking at him, as many of them always asked if Issei's white hair was natural, to which he simply told them yes with the excuse that one of his grandparents were foreigners. As Issei walked by, he checked his watch and saw he had some time for a sparring match with the kendo club, and plus it was one of those days they tend to make bets they can't win. Sure, Issei wasn't a great gambler, but when the bet involves winning in combat, he's king. As Issei walked, he followed the sound of perverted giggles, knowing his friends were probably at it again, no doubt finding a hole in the wall to peek through. No doubt his bald friend had come up with a name for it like Tit Hole or something like that, and Issei would have called it something better like the Eye of the World or something like that. As Issei arrived at the side of the kendo club locker room, as Issei saw them giggling, Issei sighed before he decided to purposely get them caught as he lifted up his foot before sending a kick straight at their rears, causing them to yell and hit their face against the wall hard. Hey, what the hell was that for? Masahara called as Issei smirked at them as they were shocked. Oh, just trying to make sure you guys pay attention to your surroundings. Issei said as he sat down cross-legged. Oh yeah, well, where were you? We tried looking for you to show you the tit hole we found, but instead we had to come here alone. The speckled boy said as Issei saw they weren't aware that the boys were heard. You don't say. Well, I came here not for the hole but for something more fun. Issei said as he waited. Oh yeah, and what can be more fun than boobs and woman? Masahara asked as Issei smirked. Oh, you'll see just about now, isn't that right, ladies? Issei asked, turned behind them as the two perverts were shocked to see this as the girls looked. Hello Issei, I see you caught your friends, and by the looks of it you're here for another spar, right? A kendo club member asked as Issei smiled. You girls know me so well. Issei said jokingly as the girls grabbed the two perverts and tied them up. Now then, I got a wager for you ladies that I'm sure you might find as a win-win for you. Issei said as the leader smirked. Name it. She said as Issei smirked. Well, it's a simple one. If you win, you can take my friends here and try to beat the perversion out of them in 1 month, and I will teach you a few sword tricks I learned. Issei said as the girls looked. And what do you get if you win? One asked as Issei smirked. You ladies must not wear panties or bras for a whole month, but you still get to beat my perverted friends till they are no longer perverts. Issei as the boys were shocked that Issei was feeding them to the sharks like that. What do we do if Issei wins? We get beat up and possibly catch boobs and puss, but if he loses we still get beat up and they get a new sword trick. The boys thought as one of these days they will get even with him. I don't know if I want Issei to win or not. They both thought knowing this would turn out bad for them in the end. The girls were blushing profoundly at the thought as they were people of honor much like Issei, and they knew Issei had a lot of sword tricks up his sleeve, both kendo related and not. Do they fight and risk losing their underwear for the month, or do they walk away and not give these two boys their punishment? Plus it's been a running wager as to who would beat Issei in a fight, and the girls were intended on winning. Alright, it's a deal. The leader said as Cadis and Murayama, who were in the club, were shocked. Alright then, if one of you ladies would be so kind. Issei said before one passed Issei her bamboo sword, to which Issei took a battle stance ready to fight. The kendo club quickly huddled to decide who would face Issei before it was agreed. One girl with large breasts came to bat as she held her kendo sword in a traditional kendo stance as she was ready to battle. Issei smirked as this was just another victory for him, plus he personally loved making his two friends lives a living hell. This is what you get when you are friends with someone you don't even hang out with after school. Now then, you ready? Issei asked as he took a samurai stance. The girl smirked as she was ready to kick ass herself as soon the battle began, but the only thing that was heard was a very one-sided fight. Scene break. After the fight, the girls who had all decided to gang up on Issei were holding their heads and other body parts where Issei had struck them, as they knew they had all lost this fight. Well, a deal is a deal, right ladies? Issei asked as he looked to the girls. You're correct, they said as they try and figure out why they even bother anymore. They hit him, he shrugs it off, they fight him in a spar, they get their asses handed to them. There is no winning against Issei Hyoudou. It was like the guy wasn't even human. Okay ladies, then hope you like feeling breezy with skirts on because you have to own up to your deal. Issei as the girls nodded. They would be relieved of their underwear before classes started, but it wasn't a total lose. Alright, but we still get to beat up your friends till they swear to never participate in perverted antics again, correct? One asked as Issei smiled. You can try, hell, don't go easy on them, but don't be too harsh, they might end up as masochists. Issei said as his friends held an tears in their eyes as they knew what was next. Alright, we will try, I don't any of us wants to be a dominatrix anyway. The leader said as one or two of the girls were innocently whistling. Well, I'll see you at class if I have any classes with you, adios ladies and perverted punching bags. Issei said with a two-finger salute and began walking off. Issei, don't leave us here. They called as the girls smirked and began the month-long beatdown for the perverts. But Issei was walking as he whistled to himself. As he walked, he tended to avoid the Citri girl in charge of the student council, mainly because she kept pestering him to join a club so he can graduate. Well, if he can find a way for Rodin to get them their own club here in Kao, the club would have consisted of him and his brood with potential members being interviewed. But the only club that would work was an occult research club, which ironically was already taken by the Gremory peerage. It was then that Issei noticed he was at the old school building that acted as the orc clubhouse as he smirked. Great, all we need now is Rias to show up and somehow and I would have the perfect joke. Issei wise cracked before Issei sensed Rias' aura as he looked up and saw Rias at the window with her hair blowing in the wind. Speak of the devil. Issei said as that was almost too easy. I can see why they call her the Great Lady of Kao Academy. Well, I'm going to do something no other man here had the balls to do since getting here. Issei said as Rias soon took notice to him. Hey Rias, good morning, made sure to get coffee this morning since I hear you're not a morning person. Issei called to her as that surprised Rias as a nearby guy and girl saw what Issei had just done, as Rias smiled a bit before deciding to return it. I'm more of a tea person myself, but I do drink the occasional coffee, but if I need a quick wake up I find your country's soft drinks to help a lot. Rias said as she smiled at Issei. Well, I suggest Monster Energy drinks from America, but drink it early in the morning, otherwise the stuff will keep you up most of the night. Issei called as he smiled as he saw the time on his watch. Anyway, see you later, I have to get to class. Issei said before he walked away, no doubt to deal with class for the day. With Rias' Gremory in the clubhouse, Rias was sitting before a chessboard that had the black and white pieces as normal, but with them were red pieces as well, a red king, a red queen, a red knight, a red rook, and a red bishop. They were around the board, but it seemed that the white pieces were also among her allies. Who was that boy, the one with white hair? Rias asked as she looked at the chessboard. Oh, him, he's Issei Hyoudou, the only boy with natural white hair. I believe he's in class 2B, and if memory serves me right, the Kendo club has been trying to beat him, but he shrugs it off. Also, he's the one Kaneko was asked to tail to find out what he does after school. Akeno said as Akeno looked to Rias. Why do you ask? Akeno asked as she Thunder Priestess was curious. He looks like he could be a relative to Sparda. Rias said as Akeno was surprised. If he is, then that means House Sparda has a possible heir. Akeno said as she could tell the boy was suppressing his power, but also some of his power was locked away. Checkmate. Rias said as she moved her piece and claimed the Black King. Rias then stood up as her breast shook a bit, not heavily mind you, but just enough to show the bra was struggling a bit to keep it from doing so. Akeno looked at the board to see where she had went wrong in this game. Your trap was very easy to see through. Rias said as she took off her blazer for her school uniform before removing the outer skirt before throwing it with the blazer. I'm sorry, I did my best to make it harder on you. Akeno said as Rias unzipped her skirt before removing it. Thanks, I look forward to next time. Rias said as her hair just screamed nobility while she unbuttoned her blouse. Rias then unhooked her bra before removing it, causing her breasts to be bare before lowering her body and removing her panties, as both seemed to be something akin to black lace. As Rias then stood back up, her breasts shook before she began walking to a set of curtain before closing it, and from it a faucet was turned and the sounds of a shower soon followed. As Rias bathed, she thought of the reports she read, and since her peerage have been suffering from someone stealing their contract payments, they had to be careful with who they give contracts to. Regulars were easy since they can be trusted, but it might be that someone who wasn't a regular had only summoned them as a test drive, and once the desire was completed, he grabbed more contracts and studied them, so he can gain the rewards. But that was only one theory, plus someone had been slaying strays in the area, which was supposed to be her and her peerage's duty, but like before, someone got to the strays before they could. Someone was invading her turf at worst, and at best they were freelancing. She couldn't allow freelancers in her territory regardless as to who they were. Rias then opened her eyes and looked up before she remembered her childhood when she had met that one man with pure white hair and a monocle, a pure-blooded devil, and his peerage of legendary warriors. Deep down, Rias knew that man and Issei were related somehow, since even in the underworld silver hair was hard to pull off, and even her brother's queen's hair couldn't match up to the one Issei, and that man had seen break that afternoon sunset. Issei yawned as he walked across a bridge before stopping and looking over the edge. Man, not a single update from Roden all day. The girls are probably finding some way to kick my ass for making such a bed, even after the nude shots and the strip thing last hunt. Issei said as he sighed. Man, halos from stray angels, red orbs from stray devils, and finally red rings from fallen angels. Man, I grab those from hunts every night, it's so lame having nothing to do. Issei said as he leaned on the wall. Issei then sensed it as he looked to the corner of his eye and saw a young girl in a school uniform, black hair, and chocolate brown eyes. Issei already knew she wasn't who she appeared to be. For starters, she was suppressing her magic, no doubt to surprise him, thinking Issei as a stray or weak devil. Well, this should be fun for Issei, since he had been looking for an excuse to cut loose. Issei then returned his gaze to his arms as he might as well play with her for a bit. Who knows, she might even prove herself to be a worthy addition to his brood. Excuse me. The girl began as Issei looked to be ignoring her. You're Issei Hyoudou from Cow Academy, right? She began as Issei looked. It's true what they say, your hair is as white as snow, winter snow, or as some of the girls at my school have said, you make snow green with envy at your hair. The girl said as Issei lifted his head and looked to her. Yeah, I'm Issei if that's what you're asking, lady. Issei said as he looked at the girl with a cool and flamboyant expression on his face. Issei looked at her uniform and mentally smirked, already seeing her first mistake. Bad move, girl, you should have used a uniform that is actually used in a real school. That uniform is clearly from an H manga. Issei thought, being as he had read the stuff. She began as Issei leaned off the railing and looked to the girl. Look, lady, I have somewhere to be soon, so if there's anything I can help you with, just say it. Issei said as the girl looked. Yeah, there is a thing you can help me with actually. She said as Issei watched her. This setup looked to be similar to a cliché man slice of life manga. No doubt the girl had been studying this thinking it would work. The wind blew like in one of this cliché mangas, as now all they needed was cherry blossom petals to start falling like in the cliché manga, and then they would really be in that manga. I just wanted to ask you a quick question. She said as Issei looked. Alright, lady, shoot. Issei said as he wanted to hear this. Are you seeing anyone right now? The girl asked as Issei looked. Well, I have to see a friend of mine and my boss, if that's what you mean. Issei said, playing dumb, knowing that if this girl was going for the cliché man slice of life manga lead heroine, then Issei might as well go for the aloof and oblivious manga hero. No, I mean, are you dating anyone? She asked as Issei looked. No, not really, I guess I just haven't found Miss Right yet. Issei said, scratching his nose, playing the part perfectly. That's wonderful. She said as Issei looked confused. It is? Issei asked as he was confused to that. In that case, since you're single, do you think you would like to go out with me? The girl asked as Issei laughed a little. Maybe if I can get a name from you, lady, unless you're okay with me just calling you lady. Issei said as the girl was shocked. Oh, gomen nasai watashi wa amano Yuma, and well, I've been watching you for some time now, since you pass by here a lot, and well, I don't know, you feel different from most people, strong but gentle, well, also handsome. Yuma said as she looked down, blushing. Waiting on those cherry blossom petals any minute now. Issei thought jokingly as he knew this girl was spouting bullshit. And well, the thing is, I want you to be my boyfriend. She called out as Issei gave a shocked look that he had plenty of practice doing in his childhood. Mitsuma and Motohama will no doubt be avoiding Issei to plan their revenge once the month is over, but Issei didn't care, he already knew most of their schemes by now. Well then, Yuma, I'll be sure to take you out on a date this Sunday afternoon, so wear something pretty. I'll meet you at the shopping center downtown, so don't be late. Issei said before walking away. Whoever Yuma really was, she was in for quite the surprise when Issei turns the tables on her. She won't see it coming till it was too late. After all, killing strays from the three factions was his job after all. Okay, I'll meet you there. Yuma called as inside she couldn't believe how easy it was. The boy had no idea what fate awaited him Sunday night, and it's too bad too, he was cute to the eye. As Issei left down the stairs he began making his way downtown to let Roden know about this. No doubt the rest of his brood was already aware as Issei smirked a bit. Whether this date turns into a hunter recruitment, the party was getting wild and in the end the show must go on. While Issei walked away, Kaneko appeared as she was eating a popsicle as she knew something was up with both parties involved. Issei had just walked into a trap and by his act he was aware of it. Why did he do it? Did he plan on turning the table on her or was it something different? Kaneko knew the girl was a fallen angel, but she didn't know if she was attempting to recruit him or kill him. Issei was already aware, but why did he willingly walk into a trap? Was he that much of a pervert that he wanted to get laid before he died? No, Issei doesn't seem like that type of person. He was a pervert yet, but even he knew his boundaries. Kaneko needed to report this to her, but she'll know how to handle this. Later at the Orc Club room, I see. Rias said as she was looking at her pawn for a bit before putting it down in exchange for a knight. She knew Issei was cocky, but he had willingly walked into a trap that he was fully aware of. This boy, he had faced stuff like this before, regardless of his normal demeanor. She was now debating whether to use the knight or her pawns. You were right, 100%. Issei was being spied on by fallen angels, and he was far more than what was said about him. Kaneko said as she also caught the sight that Issei was hiding his scent in a mask of a human. Yeah, you totally called it. Akeno said as Rias was looking at the pawn chess piece and the knight chess piece. It wasn't about choosing a powerful piece for her right now. Rias was trying to figure out which piece was worthy of Issei, a pawn who would willingly walk into a trap like a buffoon, or a knight who would willingly walk into a trap intended on turning the table. Whoever Issei was beyond the walls of Kao Academy was worth her full attention, for it might point her to the ones causing her peerage and Sona's peerage so much trouble and grief. I'm just glad I had you two keep a close eye on him. He might be a lead that can help us find the people responsible for this little invasion of Gremory territory. Rias said as she knew something was going on. Beep. Kaneko said, simply knowing they had to make sure this lead stayed alive, even if it means recruiting him. What's next? What do we do with him now? Akeno said as Rias then put the two pieces down. We need to make preparations immediately, and I'll be the one to answer this summoning. That's all we can do as the rest all depends on him. Rias said as she picked up the pawn and moved it to a different spot. Scene break that night, gates of hell downtown Cowtown, and Third Bayonetta Ost gates of hell. Issei was sitting at the bar stool as at a nearby table was Murayama and Caddis as they were drinking some human alcohol while playing a game of poker. They offered Issei a chance to play, but he declined, no doubt knowing her never wins at poker regardless of opponents. Right now the girls were waiting for Issei to finish his explanation to Roden as Roden chuckled. Seems you've attracted attention, or more specifically your sacred gear attracted attention. Roden said as Issei smirked. Yeah, my boosted gear is a good ally against strong opponents, such as ones who can give me devil arms. No doubt they think I'm a low-class devil or a campion who locked into getting this guy. Issei said as Roden smirked. Well, since me and fallen angels go way back, I can't offer much of assistance for you. Roden said as he served Issei a shot as Issei took it. Though I can say that she's just following orders now, the question is whose orders she's following. Roden said as Issei looked. So what are you planning on doing, Issei? Caddis asked as Issei smirked. I'm going to solo this. Issei said before he took the shot. What, are you nuts? Murayama demanded as Issei smirked. Don't worry, we're Nephilim. Any weaknesses the angels and devils possess we don't, plus I need an excuse to cut loose after all, and who knows, this might turn into a recruitment. Issei said as the two girls were still worried. Anywhere out in any news from Marina? Issei asked as Roden nodded. She just got finished taking out some stray angels and stray devils in Vigrid, nothing major, but no leads on any other Nephilim. Either the local sages in the area don't know anything either. So it's just another dead end there. Roden said as Issei looked to him before speaking. What about possible Nephilim artifacts? Issei asked as Roden turned his head. None, but I told you don't worry about some dusty old relics like that. If they have information they'll find you. Roden said as Issei shrugged. Alright then, we might as well head out. Issei said as he then stood up. Girls, we're heading home. Issei as the two looked to him. Got it. They said since the two have been either staying at the hangout or Issei's home since the boy had recruited them nearly a year ago after an incident that had forever changed them both as sentient beings and as people with souls. And Ost. Scene break Sunday afternoon. Issei was dressed in his normal cloths that he uses for both hunts, jobs, and normal days on the town-like dates. As far as Issei was concerned, his duds were so stylish they were perfect for every occasion, party, poker tournament, comic-con, don't ask, and hell, even at a dinner table. Issei of course had brought Ebony and Ivory with him, and with a seal on his back holding Rebellion, he was good to go. And if things go south in a way he can't handle, he'll just have Murayama and Caddis bail him out. As Issei waited though, he could feel a familiar nearby, which probably explained why Yuma was late to avoid detection from an enemy's familiar. Or she was trying to go for the whole cliché romance slice of life and I'm Mangaroot until it comes time for her to reveal herself. Not like he cared, fallen angels still use light magic, and being as he's a little of both hell and heaven, Issei was immune to stuff like that. Here, take a flyer. Came a voice as Issei looked to see a woman giving him a flyer as she was dressed as a bat of sorts. If Issei had to guess, she was the familiar of a devil, and when he looked at the flyer the design proved it. The woman smiled before walking away as Issei smirked, knowing his sacred gear had once again attracted the attention of another supernatural party. My deepest desires being granted, huh? My only desires is to be a harem king and to find a certain fucker who will be my legendary jackpot. Issei said as he remembered the picture on his desk that he had saved after his mother's death years ago. As the familiar left, Issei then went back to waiting before his date finally showed up. Sorry to keep you waiting, Issei-kun, I hope you weren't waiting too long. Yuma said as he looked to Issei. Oh, don't worry, I wasn't waiting long myself. Issei said as he pocketed the flyer without Yuma noticing. Okay then, are you ready to go then? Yuma asked as Issei smiled. I'm ready, so let's go lady, you pick where to go. Issei said, as to which Yuma smiled and took Issei's hand before they went into the shopping center. Begin dating montage. The date was going well as Issei took Yuma to the clothing store, which they looked at different shirts till Issei bought her an armband. They then began walking through the center for a bit before Issei caught sight of his one true love, weapons. As in the shopping center was a weapons store, they had weapons from guns to swords that it made Issei make a dopey smile. He was a weapon nut, he won't deny that, but the only weapons he loved to use were weapons designed to fight the supernatural, those were his favorites. Hell, all of his weapons were made to fight the supernatural, and hopefully when he finds a big and scary enough stray, he can use something from its body as a trophy to hang on his wall. Yuma saw this and was shocked that Issei was looking at a model minigun, as it looked like the real deal, except for the large sticker that said, not an actual product. Yuma smiled before tapping his shoulder, getting his attention before she pointed down the street to an ice cream parlor, to which Yuma was eating a parfait while Issei was drinking a soda. Issei was really hoping this place had pizza, but luck was against him, plus he was on the job, so he couldn't indulge himself yet. The date was going off without a hitch. Yuma had no idea that Issei was onto her, and Yuma was under the assumption that Issei didn't know about his own heritage and was a weak pervert with strength slightly above that of a human. The date, like all things, had to come to a close as they soon arrived at the park at a fountain as it was getting dark with sunset. I had a great time, Issei-kun. Yuma said as Issei smiled while Yuma took his hand. Well, I don't get the chance to impress that often, but glad you enjoyed yourself. Issei said, ready for what might happen. Yuma then let go and ran over to the fountain as she then turned to Issei with that smile of hers. As they watched, Yuma then smiled at Issei, unaware of his pistols in the back of his pants hidden by his shirt. Hey Issei, can you do me a favor? She asked as Issei smirked at that. Something only you can do, and so we can commemorate our date together here. Yuma said as she smiled at Issei. Sure babe, what is it? He asked as she walked over to his ear and smiled. Can you die for me? She whispered in her true, more sensual voice as Issei feigned shock. What? He asked using his impeccable acting skills. She then sprouted black wings that ripped through her cloths, leaving her naked, but for only a moment, but long enough for Issei to catch a good look at her body as she gained black leather clothing as Issei was pretending to be scared. Sorry, but my boss wants you to die since he sees you can become a threat with that sacred gear you have, Yuma said as she looked at Issei, expecting him to be frightened. What she was met with was something completely different. Hot damn, I knew my date was hot, but I didn't know that sweet look was hiding this. Issei said, happy as Yuma's cloths left little to the imagination. It is my birthday or something because I always wanted a stripper at my birthday. Issei said, causing Yuma to glare at him at the stripper comment. I am not a stripper, you buffoon. She yelled as she was pissed off with that comment. You sure? Maybe you'll say otherwise if you give me a lap dance. Issei said with a smirk before Yuma got pissed off. That's it. Yuma yelled before she summoned a spear of light and charged at Issei with a stabbing function. To her shock, Issei sidestepped and slid past her before with his hand sent a slap to Yuma's rear end, catching her off guard. Hiya. She yelled, clearly not expecting that as Issei smirked at this. I was right, it is right there, sure you're not up for that lap dance? Issei asked as he looked at his hand facing away from Yuma. Yuma glared at Issei as she was pissed off as she then summoned another light spear before throwing it at Issei, stabbing him in the chest, knocking him down. She then admired the armband he got her as she smiled. Though you did act like a buffoon and showed such vulgarity to me, I do love this present you got me, so I shall cherish it always, she said, but as she turned she began walking away before she felt a bullet graze her cheek, giving off a burning sensation to her cheek as she was shocked as she looked to see Issei's core holding a black gun with the words ebony on it. What, but you should be dead? She asked as Issei smirked. Issei began to rise up like a reanimated corpse as he still held his gun, which was smoking at the end of the barrel. Sorry to disappoint, but this did surprise you, didn't it? Issei asked as Yuma looked. But I stabbed you in the heart. She yelled, knowing something wasn't right with this picture. Now you grazed it might want to work on your aim a bit for next time, you know if you get a next time. Issei said walking around with the light spear still sticking out of his chest. Oh and Yuma before you ask this spear did hurt when it entered my chest and exit my back now it just itches. Issei said as he put Ebony away. Which reminds me. Issei said before he grasped the spear in both hands as to Rainer's shock, Issei began pulling it out like nothing, even when some blood spewed out. Now you see why I wear red, that so strays can't see me bleed. Issei said as he tossed the spear away where it vanished into light particles. You what are you? Yuma asked as she was shocked to see this. She felt demonic power within him, but no devil regardless of strength should be that resistant to light like that to the point that they can pull it out and the injury would heal like nothing. Oh you know just a hunter of strays from all three factions and then some. Issei said as rebellion appeared on his back catching Yuma off guard. But before I go into detail mind telling me who you are lady that way I know what to put on your tombstone. Issei said as it looks like this little recruitment attempt had turned into a hunt. Well buffoon I am Rainer now tell me how can a devil like you survive a light spear to the chest? Rainer demanded as Issei smirked as he looked to Rainer. Well if you think you can fit the answer in you then I guess I must oblige you. See I'm not a full-fledged devil, but I'm not human either, now then if a devil didn't procreate with a human to create me, then what does that leave as the only being capable of surviving an angel's light? Issei asked as Rainer looked before she was wide-eyed. No don't tell me that you're Rainer trailed of only knowing one such creature that can survive light like that after all, she was once one of those creatures before her wings turned black, marking her as a fallen angel. Yeah dear old pop was a devil from hell, well dear sweet mom was a fallen angel, since she slept with a devil to make me, so basically I'm a Nephilim one of the last few in existence. Issei said as Rainer was shocked. Rainer had heard the stories Nephilim were able to use sacred gears just as much as humans were, more so is that they were considered longinuses given physical form due to their power to slay gods and satans. No matter how she looked at it if this Nephilim had survived the purges she stood no chance against him, but if this Nephilim was born in these modern times she may have a chance. You won't scare me Nephilim if you are the last of your kind, then I'll take great pleasure in watching your kind go extinct all over again. Rainer said as Issei smirked. And tried doubt that will put you on many people's good sides when they find out who my father is. Issei said as he smirked. Oh and who is he? Rainer asked as then Issei spun ebony and ivory in his hand and pointed them at Rainer. And find out. Issei taunted as he looked to Rainer who fell for the taunt right there. And Sir Devil May Cry 3 taste the blood. Die. Rainer roared as she charged at Issei with the intent of causing him harm. Issei of course used his guns to block the weapon before spinning and shooting at Rainer. Rainer spread her wings and flew to avoid the bullets, but the young man was fast as Rainer quickly dived down at Issei, avoiding his bullets. But when she was upon him she yelped in pain as a bullet grazed her wing, causing her to crash to which Issei with rebellion slashed at her as Issei smirked. Crash and burn. Issei taunted as he looked to Rainer who was getting up and sending a death glare at Issei. You mad babe? Issei taunted as Rainer roared and charged at Issei before swinging her light spear at him like a staff to which Issei blocked each attack with rebellion before clashing with her and kicking her away. Damn you. Rainer roared as she glared at Issei. Come on babe you're not even making me work up a sweat here. Issei called as he spread his arms out to which Rainer threw her spear at him as fast as she could. Issei saw this and sidestepped, causing his left side to be skewered as Issei saw this and ripped it off fast as Rainer was smirking at him. Alright I admit I might have underestimated you there. Issei said as his blood began to drip down to his pants where a certain flyer was hidden away. But that just makes this all the more fun. Issei called as his left hand glowed green with his anticipation. Now then let's keep going after all I'm sure ladies can only take pillow talk for so long. Issei said as he did a taunt-like bow before continuing. Come on. He said with his hand reaching out to her like a gentleman, but clearly it was a taunt. Rainer then charged at Issei before he pulled out rebellion, and then a voice was heard as a draconic red-clawed gauntlet appeared in place as Issei's left hand. Boost. The gauntlet glowed as Issei felt his power double before swinging rebellion, blocking Rainer's attack with ease as she was shocked. Wait no double critical can double your power like that, regardless of how strong you are. Rainer called shocked to see this. And in most cases you'd be right if this was a double critical, this gauntlet here is my partner, and Sacred Gear Drag the boosted gear, and one of the 13 longinuses. Issei said as he showed the gauntlet causing Rainer to go wide-eyed. She now knew she was in way over her head if this boy had already awoken his sacred gear and it was a longinus, plus the fact that he was a Nephilim with prior combat experience, against a supernatural Rainer knew now she had bitten off more than she can chew. And Sir Devil May Cry image of Sparda. It was at this moment that Rainer knew she fucked up. Issei taunted using a funny vine as a reference as Rainer was shaking. She was no match for him, light attacks can't harm him, he can double his power as many times as his body can handle as needed, and most of all he had weapons that can harm her. How can this situation possibly get any worse than it already was? Oh, Rainer-chan. Issei called cutely as Rainer looked. You still want to know who my pop was? Issei asked as Rainer gulped. Well, my old man and my mom were both the ones responsible for the Great War's ceasefire. My dad, he was the strongest of all devils that legends say. He faced off against a legion of hell alone. He was the legendary Dark Knight Sparda, and as for my mother, well, she's the fallen angel Eva who turned against heaven after it had done an act that she could no longer forgive. Issei said as now Rainer felt like a cornered animal. She was facing the union between two of the most powerful beings in the three faction, and she had tried to kill him. Rainer stepped back as she needed to run. She wanted to live. Wait, Issei-kun, I'm sorry, I was only doing what I was told to do. I didn't mean any of those mean stuff I said. It's all because I'm a fallen angel. Rainer said as she was scared as she stepped back in fear. I can give you anything, Issei-kun, you name it, money, power, fame, anything you want, just don't come any closer. Rainer said as she was hyperventilating. She knew she was no match for Sparda and Eva's spawn, and maybe she can buy herself time for help to arrive or even escape. Anything I want, right? Issei asked as Rainer saw she got something. Yeah, anything. Rainer said as she looked to Issei. Well, there are many things I want, but you can't grant any of them, and one of them I'm going to make a reality myself. What I want is to find the bastard who killed my mother and made me lose my brother. Issei began as the flyer that got his blood on it was glowing with this desire. What I want is to make my mother's dream come true of a revived Nephilim race, so a great war would never happen again. Issei said as he stalked towards Rainer, as she knew those were desires she couldn't grant. And most of all, my desire is to be a harem king. Issei said as Rainer sweat drop at that, which calmed her down a bit before Issei put rebellion away and pointed ebony and ivory at her. Though I know that there is someone you care about, but your blind devotion to this guy made your soul twist your perception and logic. So I'm going to have to end you unless you actually find a way to leave. Once you do, I won't follow. Issei said as Rainer saw she still had her spear of life as the flyer left Issei's pocket and glowed, creating a summoning circle. Get away. She yelled, throwing the spear wildly at Issei as she fell on her rear. Issei dodged the spear just as Rias' grimoire formed a few feet behind him. The spear came at her instead as Rias didn't see it coming till it was too late as she felt the spear stab her chest, making her scream in pain. And Issei looked behind him and saw what had happened as Rias fell backwards with a spear of light sticking out of her chest, with blood coming out of said wound in her mouth. Rias landed on her back on the ground as her blood began to pool as Issei was wide-eyed. He knew Rias was innocent, but he didn't mean for her to get caught in the crossfire. And Sir Devil May Cry asked seeds of love. Oh shit, Rias. Issei called as he ran over to her, knowing that the light spear grazed her herd, but it was all that was needed to make this injury go from lethal, with a chance of recovery, to fatal, with no chances of recovery. Rainer was scared, but she took the chance she needed to run as she spread her wings and flew off. She had to tell the Grigori she needed to tell them now. Their target was a Nephilim as well as son of Sparda and Eva, and most of all the holder of the boosted gear Dreg. Issei got on his knees and ripped the spear out of Rias before lifting her up, holding her, as she had tried to remove the spear before, only to burn her hand and put her blood on said hand. Rias, stay with me. Issei called as he tried to keep her from dying. Issei reached into his pockets and cursed himself for not bringing any green recovery stars. Issei, Hyoudou. Rias struggled to say as she looked to Issei. Rias, I'm here, just hang on, I'll help you. Issei said as Rias looked at her. I didn't mean for this to happen, I didn't mean for you to get stabbed like that. Issei said as Rias smiled. It's not your fault. Rias said as her voice was hoarse as she was hurting herself by speaking. I should have had my familiar stay with you to keep watch. If I had known you were in a battle I would have come in person, Issei, Hyoudou. Rias said as she had seen Issei pull out the light spear like it was nothing. Rias' eyes were beginning to dull as she saw two auras within Issei, one blue and one red, as she knew these auras. You were the one who had been causing trouble for my peerage, I understand now. Rias said as she smiled at Issei. When you get my body back to my friends, tell them that my last order as their kind is for them to not blame you, and if anything have them serve you as part of your peerage or whatever you Nephilim have for a peerage. Rias said as Issei had tears in his eyes. Issei knew that sometimes when people were close to death they are able to see the auras of the world in others. My only regret is that I didn't meet the one who I truly loved, the one who was truly meant for me and me him. I have other regrets, but that is my top one. I just wish I could have a second chance, even if it's not as a devil or as Rias' grimoire. I would at least I would like to at least pray for a second chance to live life. Rias said as Issei saw it, she had the desire to live. This might be his only chance to save the girl. Partner, I know what you're about to do, but we don't know what the Nephilim brood shards effect will be on a pure-blooded devil. We already know it can turn humans into Nephilim quite easily, but this is too risky and reckless even for you. Dreg said as Issei looked at him. Do you have any better ideas that don't involve letting her die? Issei yelled as that silenced Dreg. Issei then called off Dreg before putting his left hand to his chest, where his red stone necklace was as it glowed. And Ost. Insert High School DxD beautiful red. Rias Gremory, devil of the underworld and heiress to the house of Gremory, I see your desires are true, and your prayers are just from the pits of hell to the skies of heaven. I will give you reward for the request to live your dreams and have freedom. But there is a cost to do this, though you must live for my sake, the sake my dreams, desires, and prayers, and in doing so, you will be able to achieve your own as well as your freedom. Issei said as he could feel Rias fading. Issei moved his hand from his chest where an egg-like stone appeared as it turned into a crystal with a dragon's eye inside it. From this moment onward, Rias Gremory, your life as a devil has ended. You will live for my sake as part of my brood, as my dark slayer. You are no longer Rias Gremory of the devil house of Gremory, you are Rias Gremory, servant of the houses of Sparda and Eva, though the two houses Nephilim offspring. Now part of your devil blood will vanish from your body, ceasing to be, and in the exchange your blood will be merged with that of angels. Now Rias Gremory be reborn as a Nephilim as my brood's mighty dark slayer. Issei said before putting the egg-like crystal into Rias' chest. As to Issei's joy, it was accepted. All that was left of the egg was the iris, as said iris formed into a necklace much like Issei's, but of a deeper share of red than Issei's own necklace. Issei sighed in relief as now for the changes to take effect, and to do this, he had to get her somewhere safe to recover. The school was too far away, and the den wasn't close enough either. Broden doesn't do stuff like this since he doesn't take sides, so the only option left was Issei's own home. I'm going to have to hurry, damn why I didn't listen to those lessons when it came to opening portals. Issei cursed as he quickly began running to his home to get Ria's injuries tended to, while also looking at the parts of her exposed breasts. Scene break. Hyoudou residence. Wake up or I'll kill you. Came a mechanical voice. Rias began to stir as her eyes began to focus into vision. Rias could hear what sounded like a chainsaw-wielding bitch telling her to wake up or she would kill her. Rias was allowing her eyes to slowly adjust to her surrounding before taking notice to a few things. For starters, this wasn't her bedroom, far from it, the room was completely unknown to her. Rias took sight of the large assortment of porn from American Playboy magazines to H-manga made right here in Japan, but there were also motorcycle catalogs on the desk, which seemed to have a flyer on it for a bar called Gates to Hell. Rias looked to her side and saw the chainsaw-wearing bitch app of this alarm clock was still going, as Rias wanted it to shut up. Rias then reached out towards the clock to silence it. Wake up or. The girl was cut off as Rias turned off the alarm clock. Rias then began to rise up as the blanket fell to reveal her breasts, as she felt the room spin for a minute before her body quickly adjusted to it faster than normal too. Rias looked around before she noticed this room looked to be a boy bedroom of sorts, judging by the perverted stuff. Rias then went wide-eyed in panic for a minute before throwing off the blankets off her feet, and to her relief her nether region was untouched. Rias then began getting up as she was soon off the bed and noticed that she was completely nude. Rias looked around and saw that her clothing was nowhere in this room whatsoever. Rias walked around the room a bit before taking notice to the large mirror that acts as a closet door and saw a few changes had happened to her. For starters, she was wearing a necklace she never remembered owning before. But she believed she had seen Issei, Murayama and Caddis wearing something similar. Issei more though, because both hers and Issei's were in the form of a necklace. Rias then saw her back's reflection on the window as she looked, and to her shock, there was what looked like a tattoo of wings on her back meeting at a circle of sorts. That said circle seemed to act as a place to hold a weapon. Call her crazy. Rias looked around the room for something to cover herself up, since she doubted anyone will be coming for her. Rias walked over to the bed and took the blanket before wrapping it around her body to cover her decency. Rias then opened the door and to her shock it was unlocked. Rias slowly opened the door with a creak as she saw the house looked freshly cleaned before she walked around with her bare feet, making wet taps on the ground and the blanket getting dragged on the floor a bit. Rias looked around upstairs and saw bedrooms, a bathroom, and a small office of sorts. Rias then began going to the stairs, seeing that no one was up here before she began to climb the stairs, being careful not to arouse suspicion. Rias' memories returned to her as she remembered being summoned by Issei's desire to avenge his mother and brother and become a harem king. Before the minute the summoning was complete, she was tabbed by a spear of light in the chest, no doubt being summoned during a battle. Rias opened the blanket a bit to look at her chest, and to her shock, she saw no scar or bandages, only smooth flawless skin. Rias arrived downstairs and looked outside the window, and to her shock, she saw her eyes were seeing as well as they do at night right now. Something had happened to her, and Rias didn't know what it was. All she really knew was that something was different, be it with herself or this day. Rias soon smelt food cooking as Rias looked and saw a woman cooking something, or in this case a pair of women. One had red flowing hair, that's very body spoke of Truard. As Rias walked closer, she saw that the woman at the stove was a hybrid of vampire, devil, and succubus, as she seemed to be in human form, which wasn't the most important thing. No, it was the fact that she was dressed in nothing but a bathrobe that wasn't even closed off, which exposed her body to the world, as the woman didn't even seem bothered. Oh, hello little Miss Gremory, glad you can join us. The woman cooking said as Rias licked her lips with how short this woman's bathrobe was. So would care to partake in breakfast or maybe me? The woman asked in a flirting attitude as Rias stepped back only to bump into another woman who when Rias turned to her, saw she had a divine aura to her. Don't mind Nevan, she does anything to get people onto her like right now. The woman said as Rias was shocked. She has the same name as one of the bishops of Lord Sparda's peerage. Rias said as the woman chuckled. That's because she is that bishop. The divine aura woman said as when Rias turned to her to Rias' shock, the woman was wearing nothing but an apron, silk gloves that went up to her elbows, and silk socks that went up to her thighs. And before you ask, Nevan had probably snagged your clothing like she did mine, no doubt she did this to test you in some way. The woman said as Rias nodded. Excuse me, but who are you? Rias asked as the woman sighed. I am the angel Maria the First, was a part of Eva's sacred saints before her demise, much like how Nevan was part of Sparda's peerage before his demise. Maria said as she walked around a bit. Right now Ms. Hyoudou is finishing up your clothing, but word to the wise, if you think Issei and Nevan are perverts, wait till you meet his adopted mother. Maria said as she sat down on a chair at the table trying to keep the apron from being moved up. Hey, I'm a pervert and proud of it, I just think women these days shouldn't be afraid to cut loose a bit. Nevan said as she finished making breakfast and began setting it up on the counter. And I suppose you want me to serve breakfast? Maria said with a glare as Nevan smiled widely, which caused Maria to sigh. Alright. Maria said as Nevan smiled and passed by Rias in a flurry of thunder and bats before Rias noticed something. Nevan had taken the blanket. Hey, give that back. Rias called as Nevan smiled. Sorry, we have a no-cover policy at this table right now. Nevan said as she used her magic to teleport the blanket Rias used to cover up away. Rias used her hands to cover her breasts and nether region, but Nevan instead removed the bathrobe that was already loosely covering her as Maria served the food as the angel was blushing. Oh, I thought our little fallen angel was used to stuff like this by now. Nevan said as Maria glared. I may be considered a traitor like Eva in heaven, but I am still a proud angel. Maria yelled with her face beet red. Is that so? Then why are you so wet? Nevan said as Maria glared before serving the food. Nevan then smirked before using her hand to pull Maria's apron as Rias was blushing fiercely. Maria's breast though became exposed as Nevan smiled sweetly. After all, lover, you know you can't resist me after our first night. Nevan said as Rias quickly realized these two were lovers. I will not deny that, but we have a guest here. Maria said as Nevan looked to her lover and smiled. But we did it in front of Issei, Mura-chan, and Kada-chan all the time, this shouldn't be any different. Nevan said as Maria sighed in defeat and went under the table before Rias realized what Nevan had convinced Maria to do. As Nevan ate, Maria was, well, you don't need me to tell you this, as Rias ate her breakfast quickly before a new person was heard. Sorry about those two, Grimary-san, they don't get out much, so they are stuck here most of the time, while the rest of their groups try and do the job Sparda and Eva assigned them. Came a new voice as Rias looked to see what looked like a woman in her early 30s, but 10 years younger as he looked to the two. Come on, let's eat somewhere else, I have your clothing ready for you anyway. The woman said before Rias nodded and took her plate and followed the woman to the sitting room. In the sitting room, Rias saw her school uniform waiting for her, good as new, as Rias used her magic, seeing that it wasn't tampered with other than the sewing up the holes on the front and back of them. Rias quickly began getting the cloths and putting them on as the woman sighed. I'm sorry about Nevan and Maria, they can get very horny in the morning, plus they usually come here to visit during some important times. The woman said as Rias looked to her. Okay, but who are you? Rias asked as she wondered how this normal woman could get involved with the supernatural without being recruited or killed. I'm Neru Hyoudou, you can say I'm Issei's adopted mother after his mother passed away. Neru said as Rias was looking to her. So mind explaining to me why I'm in your home, ma'am, and why you have beings from the other factions in your home without hiding their true selves? Rias asked as Neru sighed. Well, they are more here for Issei, his parents were dear friends of theirs, so I couldn't just turn them away. Next thing I know, supernatural creatures are coming to my home like it's a bed and breakfast or maybe a hideout for them, and by the end of it, my home ends up a home for supernaturals, with nowhere else to go. Neru said as Rias looked to her. I can see how that can happen, let 1 and 2 more will come, let those 2 more come and 4 more will come until they start crashing at your place. Rias said as Neru smiled. Yes, but they do pair into me, and they got me into contact with a rodent who was able to help me renovate my basement to house all these beings. Neru said as Rias was eating. Now, any particular reason why I'm here? Rias asked as she saw the food wasn't spiked, so that's a good thing so far. Issei brought you in, you were bloody, and all I know is that he saved your life, though never went into detail as the how. Neru said as Rias looked to her. How did he do it then? Light attacks of that severity should have killed me. Rias thought, knowing that something wasn't adding up. Well then, Rias, and I hope you don't plan on ratting my place out to any of the factions, after all much of these beings had nowhere else to go, and like I always says, everyone and everything deserves a helping hand regardless of what they are. Neru said as Rias looked to her. The woman had helped her, so the least she can do is return the favor. Don't worry Ms. Hyoudou, your secret is safe with me. Rias said as Nera nodded. Now then, off to school with you. If you want to make it in time to use your school's shower, then you better hurry. Nera said as Rias finished her food. Thank you ma'am. Rias said as she stood up as she saw her bag waiting for her as well. Seen break gates of hell. Insert Bayonetta ost gates of hell. So I heard what you did Issei. Rodin said as he was washing some glasses while Issei ate a strawberry sundae. Yeah, it couldn't be helped, but I guess I got a little of both last night. I got a recruit and a hunt. Issei said as he was dressed in his school uniform. You do realize what this could result in when certain parties in the underworld hear what you've done to little Ms. Gremory, correct? Rodin asked as Issei nodded. Of course, more or less. Issei said calmly as he ate his ice cream. I don't think you do. Rias was contracted to marry the third son of the Phoenix family, a perverted, arrogant and savage man named Riser Phoenix. Both he and Rias are some of the last pure-blooded devils down south, and the fact that you had done that to Rias, it means you won't exactly be well liked by the Phoenix family. Rodin said as he grabbed some different types of cups. At first it was a straight shot for the Phoenix family to get the Gremory family's power of destruction to add to their immortal flame, an offspring of such a union would have possibly been all that would be needed to take on a Nephilim. Rodin said, putting one glass with a phoenix design on it on the table next to one with a devil design on it. But then you came in a third party and messed everything up. Rodin said as he added a third glass, no doubt to represent Issei. Now that you've entered the game, the Phoenix family, or more importantly Riser Phoenix, will do everything in his power to take you down to get Rias regardless of your spot as the last known heir to House Sparda. Rodin said as he began moving the cup that represents Rias aside. Once he finds out, you'll be Riser's top enemy to take down by any means necessary, even assassination. Rodin said as Issei chuckled. Then let him come after me. Issei said as he ate his sundae. Last I heard, House Phoenix has a bit of a grudge against my old man for his objection to pure blood superiority. Add the fact that during the Great War, he had crippled hell, mainly the Phoenix family. Long story short, they are not happy. Issei said as he finished his sundae. I see, well, word to the wise, they might try and trade a Phoenix member for Rias. No doubt once they find out you're immune to holy and light weapons, they'll want to add that power and Sparta's blood to their own. Rodin said as Issei smirked. Don't worry, if it comes to that, I'll have both Rias and a new recruit. Issei said as he decided to get to business as usual. So Rodin, tell me, is the special order I made before ready? Issei asked as Rodin smiled and took out a stack of flyers which had a combination seal of House Sparda and House Eva. Just whipped it up last night. I present to you the Nephilim contracts. Rodin said as Issei looked at the top paper that had words written on it. Answers your prayers and grants your desires. Issei read as it was catchy. Yeah, though this is just the first in a new line, but it should be useful in getting your members to rank up, though like any contract, it still suffers from the proverbial long way to getting higher ranks. Rodin said as Issei nodded. So guess the halos, red orbs and crimson rings all paid off then, huh? Issei asked as Rodin smirked. That's right, just pass them out to people from any of the factions, even humans, and once they summon you, just do what they ask and get the reward. Of course, since you Nephilim can gain power from your parents' origins as well as the humans, you have the advantage in this. Just remember, I want my cut as well. Rodin said as Issei nodded. Alright. Issei said as Rodin smirked. And one last thing, don't go giving the brood shards out all to just any chick with a rack. With you Nephilim in a tight spot, you can't really afford a weak link. Rodin said as Issei finished his sundae before he began getting up. But still, I already had the girl set a few things up this morning before everyone woke up. You'd be surprised how easy it is to knock out a devil. Issei said as he began walking away after grabbing his bag, no doubt to head to school. And Ost with Rias. Rias arrived at the school as when she was walking, she saw that the sunlight wasn't affecting her like it used to. She saw she was able to see better in the daylight now, and she could also hear other people from miles away. Normally that was available to her during nighttime, but she felt completely energized even in the day. As Rias walked through the gate, she could hear her schoolmates talking and gossiping and even talking about her. Some of the stuff she heard, though, she really wishes she could have it be unheard because those things made her blush. Rias saw, though, she was one of the first students here, which means she can run to the clubhouse and get her shower. As Rias walked over, she began opening the door, already hearing Kiba, Akeno, and Kaneko already up. As Rias opened the door, a large tub of water landed on her, causing her to yell and gasp. "Aw!" Rias called, catching Akeno's attention. "Rias, are you okay?" Akeno called out, running over to Rias, but the minute she touched Rias' web body, she yelled in pain as Akeno stepped back like her hands were burning. Sure, Akeno got a bit of a kick out of it, but this burn, she knew it anywhere. "Akeno, what's wrong? It's just water." Rias said as she tried to get close to Akeno, but Akeno stepped back, be it out of fear. Rias didn't know. "Rias, that isn't normal water, it's holy water." Akeno called, surprising Rias. "That can't be right, it's not affecting me." Rias said as she tried to make sense of this. "Get out of my way, I need to wash this off fast." Rias said before running to her shower to wash off the holy water. Later after the shower, Rias had to wash her cloths completely of the holy water, but she needed to find out how someone got their hands on it and enough of it to drench her in it. Another question was how come she wasn't affected by it. Something didn't add up here, and Rias needed an answer to what and how. As Rias looked at her cloths, Kaneko touched it, and when she didn't respond, that was all Rias needed to know, that her cloths were now holy water free. Rias then put her clothing on while Akeno and Kaneko held the individual clothing before Kaneko touched Rias' pocket on her blazer, causing the small girl to yelp in pain and drop the blazer, causing Rias to go wide-eyed. "Kaneko, what's wrong?" Rias asked as Kaneko looked at her hand and saw a small burn in the shape of a cross. "Cross?" Kaneko said as Rias grabbed the blazer and dug into its pocket, where she found to her shock a holy cross was there. It should have weakened her on the way to school, yet she was completely unaffected by it. What was going on? Why wasn't her body responding to these things like any normal devil would? "Rias, what's wrong with you?" Akeno asked as she looked to Rias. "I don't know, ever since I woke up everything has been wrong and different," Rias said as she tried to make sense of this. Something wasn't right, these two things should have affected her to no end, yet it was like her body wasn't even registering a natural threat to it. "But you?" came Kiba's voice as Rias looked and saw Kiba freaked out. "We have a problem, someone broke into your office," Kiba said as Rias quickly acted and ran over to her office. Once Rias arrived at her office, she only saw two differences. For starters, she saw that a book was added to her desk next to the one she could not understand before. Rias walked over to the book and opened it, trying to figure out what had freaked Kiba out, and once she began reading it, she knew what was wrong. This book was a Bible of God, yet it wasn't affecting her like the cross and holy water should have. "Everyone, something is wrong here, my body, it seems to have undergone some form of change. I can still feel my demonic magic, but something was added in exchange for some of my magic," Rias said as her three peerage members looked to Rias. "I'm going to try something. I want all of us to say the G word one at a time. If I see a reaction from each of you, we can narrow down what has happened," Rias said before Akeno nodded. "Odd," Akeno said, moaning a bit as the lightning-like feeling went up her spine and hit her brain with a headache. "That's one," Rias said as Kaneko was next. "Odd," Kaneko said before grasping her head, knowing it affected her. "That's two," Rias said as Kiba nodded, knowing this had to be done. "Odd," Kiba said as he grasped his head as well at the headache that hit him. "Now it's my turn," Rias said before taking in a deep breath and speaking. "God," she said as to everyone's surprise, Rias didn't respond to herself saying it, as they didn't feel any reaction to it. In fact, they felt Rias' power boost a little when she said that, and saw it also boosted a little when she had the cross and got drenched in holy water. "But you, what has happened to you?" Akeno asked as Rias looked at her hands before looking at the stone necklace she had. "I don't know, but I do know of someone who does know," Rias said as she put on her blazer. "Everyone, we're taking the day off, we're going to the gates of hell," Rias said, knowing only Rodin can explain this to her, and even though it might cost her some of her contracts, she needed information as to what was happening to her. "I'll inform Sona someone had tampered with you, Rias, and we'll find out," Akeno said as Rias nodded just as Akeno left to find Sona. "Whoever did this to you, Rias, seems to be strong in magic if he or she can take away a devil's weakness to holy and light items," Kiba said as Rias nodded. "I know, plus the reason we are going to the gates of hell is because that Bible was sent here by Rodin. The cross must have been snuck into my uniform at some point, and that little prank when I walked in was clearly set up in advance beyond our watch," Rias said as she needed to get to the bottom of this. "Don't worry, we'll help you as best we can," Kaneko said as they waited for Akeno to return, since they would need help if they were about to visit Rodin the Deceiver. Scene break later. The den. Issei and his two brood members were in the den, as it looked like a hangout with a pool table, a drum set, a jukebox, and a little sitting area, as this place looked to be cleaned recently. The fans up top spun a bit as Issei was at his desk reading a motorcycle magazine, admiring the girl posing on them. Cadis and Murayama were sitting at the sitting area playing a bit of cards. The girls had called in sick, while Issei had family business to take care of, so they were in the clear. "So will Rodin keep his word?" Murayama asked as she took a card. "Yeah, if there's one thing I know about Rodin is that he always keeps his word," Issei said as he turned the page on his magazine. "You know, you could do something other than sit down and be lazy," Cadis said as Issei smirked. "Good things comes to those who wait," Issei said as the girls looked to him. "Plus Rodin will send us word if the Grimoire group are on their way here," Issei said as they were here waiting for Rias. "Alright, but if this goes south, it's all on you, Issei," Cadis said, knowing Issei was being reckless again. Meanwhile, later at the gates of hell, insert Bayonetta Ost Fly Me to the Moon, the Grimoire group walked into the bar and were met with the sound of smooth jazz music. As they walked around a bit, they saw Rodin at the bar head and walked over to him. Akeno gave Rodin a glare, knowing this man was just an opportunist who will profit off of anything, be it human, angel, fallen, or even devils, plus anything between them all, claiming that he's just a neutral party. Rias walked up to him, to which Rodin already noticed her a mile away. This is a surprise devil school kids coming into my bar, so what can I do for you, pleasure or something else? Rodin said, causing them to get on edge, to which Rodin saw. Ha, I'm just playing, what do you want? He asked as Rias spoke. This morning my body has been going through changes that might have happened after my attempt to recruit one Issei Hyoudou last night from one of your races. Rias said as Rodin was washing a glass. What I want to know is that what had happened to me after I was summoned by Issei's desires. All I remember is being stabbed by a light spear and then nothing. Rias said as that last one surprised her peerage, thinking how Rias should be read right now. In this world there's a lot of things that goes on, and some things have always been. There had always been the angels of paradise or heaven. Rodin began as he put a glass with a heaven angel design on it on the table. There had been the devils of inferno or hell. Rodin said as he put another glass in which had a devil design to it. And there had always been this world known by some as chaos or earth. Rodin said as he put a glass that looked to be of a neutral standing of earth. Devils hated angels and battled them. Rodin said as he poured a red drink into the red glass. Angels battled devils out of divine necessity. Rodin said, putting a blue drink into the angel glass. And humans feared and worshipped these power as they saw fit. Rodin said as he added normal alcohol into the earth glass. I fail to see your point. Rias said before Rodin smirked. Fallen angels came into the picture, and when they were kicked out of heaven they tried their luck in hell. While others tried their luck here in chaos. Rodin said, adding the blue drink to the glass made to be hell and earth. Fallen angels in hell fell in love with devils from many pillars, and some even of commoner society, which resulted in both the fallen and devil eloping and leaving inferno for chaos. Rodin said as Rias knew this was the starting point of the Great War. The devils and fallen angels now roaming chaos met others, and from many unions of angel and fallen angel, a love that crossed rigid boundaries, a new race was born to complete the trinity as it were. Rodin said as he added the devil drink and the angel drink to the chaos cup and turned the drink into a new type of martini. And insert Bayonetta Ost gates of hell. And what does this have to do with what has been happening? Rias asked as she took the drink and saw the little umbrella in it. It has everything to do, let's just say this story is part of why and how you were able to survive last night. Rodin said as he smirked. A friend of mine saved your little ass, and he's the reason you're alive right now. He and his group were in the area, and he saved your life. I know where he is and he wanted you to meet him. Rodin said as he looked. After all, it was because of him that your contracts have been getting stolen. Rodin said, using it as incentive to get Rias to seek out Issei. Not giving me much of a choice then, are you? Rias said as she drank from the martini, taking notice that this must be one of Rodin's original creations. Alright, we'll go check it out, but if this is one of your schemes to profit off us, I'll bring down upon you the full wrath of the Gremory family. Rias threatened as Rodin nodded. Understandable, but here you're going to need these. Rodin said before pulling out a long box and a heart-shaped box. Rias picked at the bigger box and saw after opening it a katana was in there that had a dragon's head built into the hilt. Rias then opened the box and saw a set of 4 guns in the form of derringers, as Rias saw each of the guns had either demonic or holy magic in it. Plus the swords seemed to be able to channel her magic through it. Be careful with those, I put a lot of work into them, so that makes them one of a kind, so don't break them. After all, the person who had them made paid quite a currency for them. Rodin said as Rias looked. They are made from an alloy Big Red himself and Office would kill to get their hands on, so they are hard to come by. But ancient people were able to utilize this alloy during the early days of the Great War, when devils and angels contracted with humans to utilize both the humans' innate powers and the full strength of the devil's flames and God's divine light. Rodin said as he was clearly arming Rias for a fight. Rias picked up the sword and to her shock, it vanished in her hand before Rias gasped and grabbed her back, where the sword's form was now etching onto her new tattoo, adding to it. Rias then picked up the guns and tried to figure out how she can use 4 guns. And insert Bayonetta 2 Tomorrow is mine. Rodin smirked before Rias' body began acting on its own with her new stone glowing, before Rias threw 2 of the guns into the air, where they stayed there for some time, while Rodin threw a bottle of fine whiskey into the air, no doubt to mix it. Rias didn't know what her body was doing or why it was acting on its own, but she didn't even try to stop it, like some new instincts within her was telling her it was right. Rias picked up the last 2 guns before looking at them, while Rodin shook a martini, getting it ready for drinking. Rias then stood on a stool before sending a spin kick which caught one of the guns against her shoes, causing its magic to run through the shoe, turning it into a high heel clearly made for combat. Rias then did a hurricane kick, catching the other gun, causing the same effect with her other shoe, before sitting down and admiring her guns for a bit. Rodin was finishing the martini while Rias was doing this before Rias ended up pointing the gun in her right hand at Rodin, who was giving Rias a shot of this martini, no doubt using supernatural ingredients to see if she would get a buzz. And insert Bayonetta Ost gate of hell. Kaneko and Akeno gave a round of applause to Rias, as the 3 then held up a sign that gave straight 10 points for their butchu. What was that? Rias asked as she didn't expect her body to move like that. And probably part of your new status might become more common as time goes on with new weapons. Rodin said as Rias took the shot and downed it. And this could be either really good or really bad. Rias said to herself as she didn't know what effects these changes will have on her. Alright then now get out of here, can't have my business closed down when people see minors here. Rodin said before the peerage nodded and left. Once they were gone, Rodin nodded to his familiar who nodded back before vanishing to inform the brood that the Grimory peerage was on their way to them. Scene break that evening. Rias Grimory and her group arrived at the place as it looked like an office building of sorts, as it lacked a sign. Outside it though, two girls were there as they looked to the two. Rias quickly recognized them as Murayama and Caddis from the Kendo club. But this shouldn't be right, they should be at school. So you guys made it, huh? Caddis said as she then turned to Murayama. Murayama, looks like you were right, they did notice the changes sooner, but I guess Mrs. Hyoudou sneaking across into Ria's uniform helped, and our dropping a tub of holy water and putting a Bible in her office helped as well. Caddis said as Murayama smirked at her. Wait, those were you? But how did you find out we were devils? Akeno called out as Murayama looked. We were actually aware for a bit over a year and now we just never acted because you didn't try and attack us or get in our way. Murayama said as she continued. Though we needed to rank up also, so we had to steal your contracts and modify them to suit our needs. Luckily we didn't steal your regulars and did it sparingly on both groups of devils here. Looks like you had noticed something was up. Murayama said as Akeno looked. Ara, maybe I should punish these two naughty girls and make their boss come out. Akeno said as Caddis stepped up. I wouldn't do that, you stand no chance against us. Caddis said as Kaneko glared. We outnumber you with 4 against 2. Kaneko said as she was ready to pull out her gloves. Actually Nico-chan, the numbers are pretty even without our boss stepping in, as far as I see it's 3 on 3. Caddis said as Murayama continued as Caddis' words shocked Kaneko. One of you are on our side and aren't even aware of it. Murayama said as that surprised them as they looked to each other trying to figure it out. You won't use wordplay to turn us against each other, bring out your boss now. Rias said as she wasn't going to allow these girls to mess with her peerage's mind. Well, it doesn't matter, we're only here to make sure your peerage stays out here, our brood king wants to see Rias Grimory. Murayama said as Rias glared. And why is that? Rias asked as she could smell a trap. Simple, he wants it to be one-on-one and that he needs to see something. Caddis said as Murayama spoke. If they try and get in without our okay, the boss says that we can kick their asses till they decide to stay put. Caddis said as to Rias shocked angelic greaves appeared on Caddis's feet while demonic gauntlets appeared on her arms, both of which seemed to be from tattoo-like birthmarks. Murayama summoned Alistair on her back and blade barrel at her hip, showing that if the peerage attacks them to get in, they won't stand a chance against those capable of utilizing angelic and demonic weapons. Everyone stay here. Rias said as the peerage was shocked. Good choice. Murayama said as Rias looked to her peerage. If anything happens, if they attack you, then run and tell my brother as to what happened. If you hear fighting inside, then get away. Rias said before walking forward. Of course Rias' peerage wasn't going to let that order of running and leaving her for dead be registered in their minds, so if anything happened they were acting regardless of impossible odds. Rias walked to the 2 Kendo club girls before they stepped aside to let Rias in. Rias walked into the place prepared for whatever she was about to be faced with, knowing full well she needed to be ready for anything. Inside, Rias walked in to see this place might pass as a man cave equivalent to her own office. But what really caught Rias' attention was the man sitting at the desk with his feet on said desk reading a magazine. Rias instantly recognized him as Issei as the boy looked at her. Hey Rias, glad you can arrive. Issei said as he threw the magazine in a pile with the other ones that were already read. Issei, where's the guy I was supposed to meet? Rias asked as Issei got his feet down and smirked. You're looking at him. Issei said as he spread his arms out. So you were the one who changed my body. Rias said as Issei stood up and walked around his desk till he was in the front. That's right. Issei said as Rias got angry. And what did you do to my body? Though I am grateful for the new immunity to angelic base attacks, pieces aren't adding up. Why hunt strays and why steal our contracts? Rias demanded as Issei seemed to have been looking at something on his desk, paying Rias no mind. Think fast. Issei called out, throwing a part of Aquila at Rias, who saw it was a holy weapon, but Rias still caught it with ease. Nice reflexes. Issei said as Rias threw Aquila, which returned to Issei's hand. Now noticed something, Rias? Issei asked as Rias looked to Issei. Other than the major changes, nothing. Rias said as Issei sighed. Okay, then I'll be blunt. During the Great War, a race went extinct because heaven and hell wouldn't get past their arrogance and pride and made a short truce to wipe out that race, just as they finished creating their Nephilim brood system. Issei said as Rias was getting the picture of it. The Nephilim brood system was to allow any of the other races to be converted into Nephilim by means of reincarnation, much like the devil's evil P system. So when you got stabbed and were at death's doorstep, I revived you as a devil, though I didn't think pure blood devils with a king piece could be reincarnated. Issei said as Rias was surprised yet livid. Basically you're my servant now, by brood's equivalent to a queen, my brood's dark slayer. Issei said as that made Rias livid. And what gave you the right to reincarnate me as your servant? Rias demanded as Issei chuckled at the new Nephilim. And what gives angels and devils the right to reincarnate humans against their will upon death? Issei said as he contradicted Rias. We have our reasons. Ever since the ceasefire our numbers have been crippled, that we had no choice. Rias said as Issei smirked. Then by that logic my race has more of a claim than you do, because we are practically extinct if we don't use the Nephilim brood system, because other than me, there is only one possible brood alpha left, so in other words your argument is irrelevant. Issei said as Rias did not know that. The pieces began falling into place. The reason they had been stealing contracts was to help the two members rank up fast. Same could be said for hunting strays. It would make sense as to why they would do this. A race on the edge of extinction after a possible revival would be desperate and couldn't afford any tries for blood purity when there wasn't enough for it. Basically, as far as she saw it, Issei and the Nephilim here were the victims. But her duty as her peerage's king and the leader of the Grimmery turf in Cow City comes first, and even though Issei was her new master, she can't reject her origins or her duty as a devil. Then I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave this territory or cease all activity here. Rias said as Issei laughed a bit. Actually, I was meaning to talk to you about that, since a special order I requested from Rodin was finished, meaning I won't have to steal from you guys anymore, but I won't leave or cease my activity. In fact, I might have a bit of a proposition for you, but it depends on how this turns out. Issei said as he flicked his coat a bit to grab a certain friend. How what turns out? Rias asked as her new instincts began acting up. This. Issei called before pulling ivory from his person and firing it at her, causing Rias to jump out of the way and take cover. Regardless of if you win or lose, the battle will determine if I will make this proposition with you. Issei said before Rias pulled out her new guns, which had Elven Knight written in exquisite European calligraphy on its barrels, as the Devil guns had the world's Alpha and Omega on it, while the Angel guns had King and Queen on it, and began firing at Issei, who pulled out Ebony and fired back before getting to cover. I guess this party has just got crazy. Issei called as he saw his jukebox and knew what this party needed. End of the here. So that's it for today's video guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends. Bye.